I'm Leah Satilli, and this is Notes from the Edge, a podcast by The Western Edge. We're a small operation devoted to bringing investigative journalism across the Northwest, and we can only do that if you subscribe to what we do. Please visit thewesternedge.media to subscribe and support our work. Today, I am so excited to have one of my favorite Northwest journalists and humans on the show today. Jule Banville is a professor at the University of Montana School of Journalism, where she teaches feature writing, audio production, and, of course, the topic of today's podcast, obituary writing. She's also the host of one of my favorite podcasts of the last few years called An Absurd Result, which I'll link to. And today we're here to talk about her new podcast, which I love so much, called The Obit Project. Jule, welcome to the show.
I could just listen to you the whole time. Can we just do that? This is so
we could just
fun.
Write stuff for each other and then just read it to each other. And what's that?
What's that about you for a while, and then let's just do that. What do you think?
Okay, cool. Sounds great. All right, you go next. Let's talk about
your
people.
I don't know if you're listening or watching, but Leah Satilli is wearing a Twin Peaks.
It's a great Twin Peaks shirt. Hard to see, but
very cool, and I covet it. Amazing to see.
I got it on Etsy, and if there was a whole bunch of people wearing this shirt, I would be stoked. So
yeah, life would be better.
Major breaks.
Yeah.
I'll
put it in your obit. How much you love it.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Excellent.
No, hopefully. Well, I don't want to outlive you. That's bad karma. I don't want to outlive you.
I mean, look, if you do, write my obit.
I'll give notes. Okay, I'll give notes.
Great. I'll write yours.
Yes.
Okay. Let's talk about obits. You have got a thing for them. I've known this about you for a long time, and I'd love to hear maybe you talk about how they fit into our understanding of what journalism is and how you got into obits.
Obits, dead people. Do we love them? We do, right?
Yes.
My friend Leah likes to go visit graves of people she doesn't know. So I know you get it, but okay, obits, I lived in a really small town, and we got the paper, and my mom would get it for the grocery ads, and I would read all the things, and it was a tiny paper then. Imagine what it's like now. But I would just read it front to back. And so I think that's how I started to love obits, because I would read those too. Even when I was this dork teenager, I'd be like, oh, look at this cool old lady who had bees in her yard or whatever. There's always some little nugget, right? That's oh, that's so delightful. So I think that started then. And then I started teaching here in Montana, and I was given this class, feature writing. And feature writing, how broad is that?
Right.
Leah, I would take it from you because it would be amazing. Let's read you the whole time. And you taught a version of that here as well.
I did. Yeah. Narrative feature writing. Yep.
Yeah. So it can be so many things. And I was like, well, what do I want it to be? And I had started reading this book by Jim Sheeler, which was just called Obit. And it was this little compendium of obits that he wrote for the Rocky Mountain News. And they were unlike all those obits that had this is where the person lived and died, and this person they married, and this is where they went to college, and blah, blah, blah. These were here is the thing that made this person tick. Here is the real lovely, small, bouillon cube of this person.
Right. Yeah, because there are there are obits, and then there are obits.
Yes.
They just are the most, you don't have to know the person, right? Exactly. To love it. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I loved those. And they were short. Students love to not write 10,000 word features. So this would be kind of a dip your toe into this, write an obit. And then students were like, what? I have to go knock on the door of someone who just lost their person, and I have to ask them about that, and you're an ogre, basically. Right? Why would you make me do this? And at first I was like, "Ooh, let's just try it. Let's just see." And then, then I just kept teaching it because it ended up being this wonderful, like, memorable experience for students because people wanna be asked,
Mm,
right? And when
yeah.
you're a stranger and you ask and you're like, "I read this person's obit, but now I wanna know more," what a lovely feeling, right? And so then these people
Yeah.
would just, like, come into my house or even come to the funeral sometimes, right? And then, like, they get out their scrapbook and, like, here's all the letters we wrote to each other. Here's video, and then we would, like, have that too. And it came out much better than I thought, and so I just kept teaching that, and then students at graduation would get up and kind of talk about it sometimes.
Mm,
Um, it's one of those things, like, in college, maybe you have, like, one paper you loved or one
right.
assignment that you dug or one book that you read, and for, a fair number of my students, it was the obit assignment,
I
and
can
so
imagine.
yeah.
I mean, it's also like, as you're talking about it, like, the way it's like such a great exercise in what journalism is too,
Mm.
right? Like, you need to go get facts, but you also have to do those uncomfortable things, like make a phone call or knock on a door and, like, just push yourself a little bit, and that's, like, a great I mean, because the reward at the end of that is potentially writing a really beautiful thing. I could see why it would be memorable for people.
It was all those things, but it was also the thing that we were trying to make them do too, which is, like, really listen,
Mm,
right? And really sort of, like, sit with somebody in a hard thing like grief. I mean, a lot of these stories have lots of joy in them,
yeah,
which is my favorite part because it's like when you remember something you love about somebody or some story where they were, like, totally themselves and maybe goofy or whatever it is, but it's sad too, right? It's sort of like
sure.
and these students would often be, college age, and the dead people would often not be college age. I mean, sometimes they would, do stories about young people, but often oldsters, right? And, I loved that dynamic too, where it's just like when you're in college and you just think and it is, your whole life's ahead of you, or
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
invincible, or you're like young and dumb and broke, probably, like,
yeah.
they say. The song says, my kids, yeah, anyway, I'm not gonna talk about young, broke, and dumb or whatever it is. Wow.
I wouldn't know the
Could I
reference
sound
anyway, it'd be
older
lost
than I
on
am?
me.
I could. If you give me a chance, I can sound older. Yeah. But I love that they would, like, meet these strangers who were not their generation, maybe not their politics,
Hmm,
and just meet on this level of, like, one human being. One
yeah.
human being.
That's interesting. So, would you have, like, taught would the Obit Project, the podcast, would it have existed had you not taught that class? Or was it, like, the magic that you were seeing in your students that sort of made the podcast happen?
I think it would not have happened because in my head it was a writing assignment.
Right.
I don't know why that click didn't happen for me because I was teaching audio narratives as well, like these deep reported pieces in another class, but it was really connecting again with Jad, and he was like,
Hmm,
"Why?" It was his idea, like, it really was. It was like,
hmm.
"Well, how come this isn't a thing we hear? Because it's such a simple idea." And I was like, "Huh, yeah, I don't know, let's make that. That'd be cool to work
I
with my
love it.
friend again," and he's, like,
Yeah,
a rock star, but he's also just my friend, and so,
yeah.
and he kind of well, we were drinking wine, Leah. That is the case.
Where all good things begin.
And, yeah, and he is just exactly who you think he is. He's himself always as he gets out this napkin and he's drawing, like, concentric circles and, like, this could be this, and we can make, like, an opera that's an obit, and I'm like, "Yes." Or we could just teach a class and have the students do it as an audio thing and see how it sounds and go from there, and that's what we did.
That is amazing. I love that. I mean, we were just talking about I wrote a story this week about a college class and, like,
Yes, which
it was
oh my
also
gosh.
came out of,
I
like,
just
a
I need to riff. I need to riff. We have to
All
stop.
right,
That
Rick.
piece that piece was unlike any piece I have ever read, and I just wanna say, like, you got it so right. You
Thank you,
listened
Jule.
to college students, you really heard their lived experience, and I'm just like, "How come I've never read a piece like this that
Yeah.
gets it so right?" Amazing.
I
I
mean,
love
you know how I feel about college students. Like, when I was at the University of Montana, they changed my life. Like, I really found a lot of hope in them at a time when I had been doing a lot of very dark, difficult reporting. So, I'm always excited to talk to college kids, but, like, to hear from them this, like, lack of hope, which was a real change from when I was at UM in 2019, that was just really sad to hear. But this is all to say thank you. But that class that I talk about in the story was born of similar circumstances. A
yeah.
professor has an idea and just goes with it. And I just like that is the coolest thing, by the way, to just be like, let's educate our students on this cool idea. We just like that's true journalism nerdery too.
Yeah, you are making me like my job again. Thank you so much. It's
Oh, you're
been a
you're
rough
welcome.
semester, and I'm like, "Wow, it is so cool what we get to do."
It is, it is. I dispatch in and out of university life, so I never have to see the, like, hard part of it, so
I'm
I'm not
glad.
afraid.
Don't watch the sausage. Don't
Okay,
watch it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Academe.
So, let's talk a bit about I would love actually before we get into kind of a little bit more on the podcast, like, journalism, as we know, is so broken. And I'm just curious, like, how, or if you have an awareness of how obituaries have suffered or
Mhm.
changed, or are they the one thing anchoring newspapers at this point?
I mean, they're a paid ad for newspapers, I don't think that
Right.
was always the case, so the revenue from obits, is it keeping newspapers afloat? Probably not, but it's also this thing that now families write for themselves,
Right.
right? So,
Right.
yes, when I was coming up through newspapers, obits were a thing that we reporters would write. So, I think that was weird maybe even then,
Mm,
but I think it's definitely weird now, and I think there are very few papers that have an obit desk.
right.
The New York Times does, and I read those obits all the times, but they're also for, if not famous people, and people who've somehow risen to this level where the New York Times pays attention.
Mm,
So, yeah, I mean, I do think that it's sort of a lost art of journalism, and it's also one that's like it's really easy way to teach journalists because it is focused on, like it's a thing you can explain, where
right.
there's just like a long form feature that needs to be not a topic, it needs to be an angle, and you need to have this wider, what you're going to be your like nut graph.
Yeah.
This is about a person. Go talk to the people and see if you can really write the truth. And then you
Mm,
can also make a connection, and usually my students would like share it with the people who let them in,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So, it would just like it worked on multiple levels, but yeah, in this way too that it's like, journalists used to do this kind of thing. And so maybe you could too. Maybe, and then
Yeah.
I have heard from students who go on and, work at newspapers typically, and sometimes they'll do kind of an obit-esque kind of
Huh.
story. Like somebody
Yeah.
died tragically and they kind of dig into that person's life, and then they send it to me and they're like, "I did this story and it's because I learned how to report an obit." Because a
Amazing.
lot of things are obits when you think about it, right? Like a lot of things
Yeah.
are about people who died, and then we try and learn about them.
Right. That was a question I had for you. Obviously, like you say, with the New York Times, there's celebrity, remembrance or, whatever, people of a certain stature. But, like, what rises to the level of an obit that's like a feature obit?
Mm.
Is there, like, a certain criteria that you talk about? Or in a perfect world, does every person deserve a feature obit?
Every person deserves a feature obit, Leah. I just don't
Yeah.
wanna edit all of those.
That's a lot of editing
That's a
for
lot
one
of editing.
professor.
Um, I the way that I sort of introduce people to it is just to say, "Here." I used to cut them out of the paper and just be like, Here's, like, all, like, here's a bunch of clips." Remember clips?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
and then
used
I'd be
to
like,
I remember my
find
first
one that somehow
journalism job,
interests
I,
you."
like,
Oh, sorry?
cut no, you're fine. I remember my first journalism job, I'd, like, cut all the clips out and, like, mount them. And I
With
had
the
this, like,
glue.
scrapbook,
Yeah.
and yeah, I'm like, "What would I even do with that now?"
Have
"Hello,
them.
here's my
Have them. You can
scrapbook."
have them. So now I'm like, okay, they're mostly on websites of funeral homes
Right.
because that's part of the package when you get some funeral services lined up,
Mhm.
right? So it's just
Mhm.
like because then not as many people do it because newspapers keep dying. They don't publish as often and they still charge, right? So they still charge it, and sometimes it's behind a paywall even. So it's like so really the more reliable place to find obits that might rise to the level of like this could be an interesting story. Those are on the websites of funeral homes, but I don't have like a they have to hit this bar. What I say is like, what's interesting to you? Like go read a bunch because then you'll know how how this person wanted to be remembered, perhaps because maybe they wrote it themselves or the family member wrote
Mhm.
it. And I'm like, there, find something in there that speaks to you, that you relate to, and that's it. And then they
Yeah.
just go, and then as they're reporting it, then we'll talk about like, well, what is universal about this person? Like, what is relatable to everybody who doesn't know this person? And sort of like what made this person tick, and then can you focus in on that and make a story? So yeah, I think anybody
Mm.
could have a beautifully reported obit, and they should.
It's interesting. My reporting partner at the Western Edge, Ryan, and I have been talking a little bit about obits lately, inspired by you, but also some reporting that we've been doing, and that sometimes it can be difficult to like excavate the details of people's lives. I mean, what questions do you feel like you've come around to that draw out good, rich detail from people
Mm.
who've experienced loss?
I mean, honestly, it's like time. You know that.
Yeah.
It's like if you
Yeah.
just sit with a person for longer than 10 minutes, it's like a magic question. I mean, sometimes it's like, what did this, what did you take in your own life from this person? Right?
Mm.
Or sometimes people will say adjectives, it's just like, "This person was so bubbly, this person was so funny, this person was so serious, this person was such a dork," whatever it is,
Yeah.
and then I sort of say, "Okay, that's a little window that you could walk into," and say, like,
Mm.
"Can you tell me a story that shows that?"
Yeah, yeah.
Like,
Oh, I love that.
and then they do, right? Then they're like, "Oh, yeah, this one time," and off they
Yeah,
go.
yeah. God, what a dream. I mean, honestly, those people that get to write obits at the New York Times, granted, I wouldn't wanna write about celebrities, but, like, what a dream job. That's just
They
such a
often
cool
write about
thing.
dorks, though, too.
Yes,
Like
they
people
often
who
do.
invented, like,
The
I don't
24-hour news
know,
cycle,
dolls or
right?
whatever. Right,
Ted
yeah.
Turner just yesterday got an obit, and I was like, "Oh, that's the guy. That's the guy who did that to us."
Hey, thanks for letting me know.
No shame. No shame to Ted. So what I do know is that I feel like you've been talking about the Obit project as an audio project for years. So tell me a little bit about this idea of selling. You happen to have a friend that's very well connected within the audio industry, and yet this was
And
still a
yet
very difficult project to pull off. So as much as you're willing to share, talk about that story that came to It's so easy when people like binge your podcast and you're like, you have no idea the years that went into trying to get this thing through.
Oh, you do know that well. Yes.
Yes.
Um, yeah, it has been like unfortunately for you, you're my friend, and so you have been to other people it might be new.
Yeah.
But yeah, you've been listening to me yammer on about it for several years. We did pitch it in Brooklyn to one of those companies and who are bankrupt now. I'm not even sure exists. And, it was one of those like 4-hour, 5-hour meetings and somebody orders in lunch and then what
You
about like
got
celebrity
lunch? Wow.
Deadpool? Oh yeah, 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 yeah. And that went nowhere sometimes. And that really was just like they were like, we want to work with Jad Abumrad. And I was like,
Mm.
and then Jad is Jad. So he's like, and she comes with.
Yeah.
Right? And so, like, this is what I'm interested in, and it just never went anywhere, and at that point, I think we had taught the class, so I taught it twice, and the first time around, Jad was zooming in a little bit more than he did the second time around because he was doing his own project on Fela Kuti at that point.
Hmm.
So, we knew after that pitch meeting that we didn't want the podcast industry to, like, eat this one up and spit it
Sure.
out
Yeah.
because they'd want more episodes than these stories take just forever, not just, like, getting the podcast made. It was like the stories just took forever,
Right.
to make them something we felt really great about, and so we were just like, "You know what? We don't wanna lose what we're doing with the students." We don't we felt like the messages we were getting from the industry were like, make it national, make it bigger,
Hmm.
make it worthy of Jad. And it's just like, you know what? This is that.
Yeah.
Even if it's
Absolutely.
right here at the University of Montana and it involves, other people from Montana who are making it and also people who lived and died here. So it was just like logistically it made sense to keep it in Montana because we were really loving what the students were doing.
Yeah. It's such a sad indictment, I feel like, of journalism, of publishing, of the podcast industry that you're like, we would love to be able to pay for this thing,
Yeah.
but it's either we pay for it or we keep the integrity of the idea. And I'm glad you made that choice, but that is
Yeah.
a hard choice to make. Like, I think that you're right too. Like, people do not realize how long it can take to produce a show. It's been interesting to me lately that I'm coming to understand that the wider understanding of what the public thinks a podcast is like what we're doing right now,
Right.
which is not what you and I think a podcast is. To me, it's like a beautiful narrative, 8 to 10 episode series. There's a story arc, there's characters. It's a
Where there's
movie in your
beautiful
yeah,
writing, I
right,
mean, that's
right.
the thing that I love
Yeah,
about podcasts because it's really when you boil it down, it is about the writing a lot of the
yeah,
time. Yeah.
yeah. But I do like to see people shoot the shit too,
Sure.
every now and then,
Sure.
just not all the time. Um, so, okay, one thing I did wanna ask you about, you and I talk a lot just in life about gender, about, feminism, about feminist ideas, about sexism in journalism. I'm curious if you've noticed that in obituary writing, if,
Mm.
specifically, like, women are if their life is rounded out maybe better in good obit writing, or if you've noticed that.
That is a great question, and how can you not, right? I mean, it's
Right.
just like, if you start noticing all the places where half the population aren't, you can't stop noticing that.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
so it's like you page through, yeah, if we're stick here with the New York Times, and I'll look at the obit page on a Sunday, which I get delivered to my house, not on a Sunday because I live in Montana, but
It takes a while.
it takes a minute, yeah, and it'll just be like, man, 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 you know, and
Yeah.
yeah, it's disheartening.
Yeah.
And honestly, in our project, it's not. equal either. Like the obits that my students were interested in telling are often because somebody did really something fascinating in their lives.
Mhm.
And the way that we write obits about older women, when the families write the obits, right, tend to be about like she raised kids and she did these things
Yeah.
also, but
Yeah.
and she had a mean lemon pie. And
Yeah.
we do have episode 11 is about this older woman with the obit that was written in that way. And the thing that we knew about her before the reporter went into it was she had outlived 4 husbands. She
Mhm.
just kept getting married, and then they would
Mm.
die, and then she'd get married, and then they would die, and so we're like, "What's the story with this lady who, just couldn't live without a man?" And that wasn't her story at all.
Amazing.
She was feisty. She was a feisty old feminist.
Hmm.
And that's what the story's kind of about. And I love the twist that sometimes will happen where we go into a story, or the students will go into a story, or the producers, and it's like they'll base it on like the person's picture. Oh my god, he looks like
Mhm.
you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
a
Yeah.
country gentleman or whatever. And then they find out like he was a cop who would like put his kids on the couch and like shoot through his house.
Oh my god. A story you have told.
Yeah, because reporting. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Because
Yeah. Yeah.
reporting. But yes, one thing that is the case with this project is, save for Jad, it's made by women. Most of the, reporters in it are women. And, that's important to me. But yes, the way that the obits it's tough. You have to really figure out who women are beyond what the obit says about them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Part of the reason I asked that question was, you have 6 episodes out, right?
Yes.
This is 6 now, and
Right, yeah.
there's gonna be 12.
We're halfway
And I
there.
and I have listened to 3, so I'm like a quarter of the way
Thanks.
through or whatever, not even a quarter. But, the one that I, was sort of prompting this question was that episode about
Yeah.
Ruths, and I just was destroyed in the best way by that
Really?
episode. Like, every part of it I loved. It was just, like, warmed my heart. It was wonderful. There was just this, like, sound and love in it, and I just immediately texted it to, like, 5 people. It was like, "You gotta listen to this, you gotta listen to this." Like, it
Oh
was
my
so
goodness.
interesting, but it also made me just think about, like, here was this very interesting woman who was
Accomplished.
eulogized in the New York Times too,
Yeah.
I believe, but,
Yeah.
r your former student Ruth took it to this place that just was it just blew my mind. I loved it so much, so thank you to you
I
and
know, I'm
Ruth.
not supposed to play favorites, but
Yeah,
and
so
also
good.
the reporter on that, my Ruth, Eddie. Ugh,
Yeah.
she's so rad, Leah. You guys would just be fast friends.
I wanted to be her friend immediately. Yeah,
She,
just the
like,
fact that she
she
cuts
wears, like, an
out
eyeglass chain,
oh,
and yeah,
yeah, we should bring
yeah,
those back. What an
yes,
excellent idea. I
yeah.
need them more since I have to take off my glasses now to read anything up close, so maybe I'll join the,
Look at you,
eyeglass
elder
chain.
millennial.
I know, I'm getting so old. Um What was I gonna ask you next about obits? I mean, the project is restricted to Montana, and I did wonder, if you thought about was that I mean, it sounds like there's infrastructure there, but is there a lack in Montana obituaries that you're trying to fill a little bit with this project?
I mean, I think there's a lack of, like, deep dive narrative stories,
Right.
like the ones that I love, in the place that I live. So, I think it's a lot like your approach, honestly, the way that you think about Portland and how people write, like the New York Times or someone else write about Portland or, helicopter into it. And it's just like the Pacific Northwest, Montana's just misunderstood
Yeah.
and
Well, talk
diverse
about
and
that a
deep
little bit
and
more,
weird, and it's
actually.
like it's
Yeah.
full of weirdos in it, and yes, they feel connected to a place, in a way that is, maybe not typical, but it's also there's so many kinds of people here whose stories we don't get.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That misunderstanding of Montana, can you talk about that a little bit more? Because I do think that, like, Montana is just a curiosity to so many people, but particularly for kind of that helicopter journalism, there
Yeah.
is especially in the era of Yellowstone, right? Like, there's been a real interest in Montana.
Is
How is
there
that?
is there an interest in Montana
How how is
because
that
of
going for you?
Yellowstone, or is there an interest in the fake Duttons?
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah,
I've never watched it, honestly, but,
I haven't either.
um well, I'm an outsider, right? So it's just like that matters here.
Hmm,
There's
yeah,
like,
if you don't have generations.
people who talk about Montana and then they look you up and you're like, "Pfft, you're not a Montanan." And so I don't ever purport to be. I've been here 17 years.
Not a Montanan.
Not a Montanan. Right. My
Okay.
kids were born here. Maybe they can claim it someday. But yeah, so I have a deep, deep interest in this place that I will die in, likely, right? So, moved into this house and I was like, feet first is how I'm coming out of here. 'Cause it was a pain in the ass to move from the East Coast to Montana. But
Yes, yes.
um yeah, I think that Montana is misunderstood in the way that just like people fly over it and they do some sort of like Bozeman-ified trip that's like
Mhm,
where they like test out their cowboy outfits like and then come and it's like, I love my students, Montana and not, but they are Montana to me,
mhm.
right? And they're
Yeah,
all different from each other and they all have different loves and passions and so yeah, my hope for Obit is that like there's some breadth of kinds of people in there. And we
yeah.
do have like a farmer who died right where he was born and married the girl down the street and it's not an incorporated town.
Mhm.
It's like on the map, but it's just like, oh yeah, right off the interstate, that's that place. But that isn't that place to that guy, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
then
yeah.
we have a person like Ruth Anderson who was this sound artist and started this whole sound department at Hunter College in the middle of New York City and lived in the Bronx and but she was a Montanan for real, for real.
Yeah, yeah,
So that's kind of like what I hope people get is just that there are all kinds of people out there
yeah,
and some of
yeah.
them live here. So, and I hope that somebody makes Obit Project somewhere else.
Well, that was what I was gonna ask you. I mean, I know this is hard to do, but it personally breaks my heart a little if this is only gonna be 1 season. So, I mean, do you have larger ambitions for this? Are you gonna keep going? Is it possible?
What was that,
Yes, here's your
audible?
answer.
Is my horse noise audible? Hmm. I mean, the way that Jad talks about it is always just be like, I think Jule should just like do this everywhere for everyone. And I'm like, do you, Jad? Do you think that? Do you think I should do that? So
I mean,
I
I think that
I
too, but
love
I want
making
you to
these
get paid.
stories, but my hope is that they're like, you know, dandelions out there and then someone
Mm,
else can make what they wanna make.
sure.
Yeah.
Is there
I
is
don't
there
have
talk
grand
of a second
ambitions about
season?
it. Sorry, what?
Is there talk of a second season?
There is not talk of a second
Okay. Should
season.
we talk about it?
Can we
I mean, I
talk
kinda wanna pitch one. I wanna pitch an obit.
Yeah, when you make a podcast, it's just like you put it out there into the ether. You have no freaking clue if people are digging it, not digging it, listening even. Like you don't even get like
Yeah,
numbers that are real.
right.
Because people don't download podcasts. They just like click and then
Mhm.
let's go. So, I'm just in the middle of putting it into the ether. I have no idea how people are receiving it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Except for you told me you like 4 Ruth, so thank you
Yeah, I
for
mean,
telling me because now I know I've got at least 1 listener, it's amazing.
yeah. I'm listening. The Western Edge subscribers will be listening. I
Awesome.
presume because they're the same kind of nerds as us. Um, I guess the last thing I want to ask you is, as this person who like you work in obits, you have created the dream, obit job, I think, which is an audio version. Uh, what is do you have obits that stick out to you as like
Mm.
favorites?
Um, well, Jacob Bainham, who did an obit about an elephant, that was
Oh, I
episode
love that.
3.
Yeah.
He did an obit for his father-in-law that ran in the Missoulian, and this was before I knew him. Um, and it just had this one line in it that I just love so much, and I don't even know why. Like, when I say it out loud, I'm like, "It's not," but it was like, "He loved more pepper on his eggs than most." And I'm just like, the little
So good.
details of
Yes.
people is what, like,
Yeah.
always that I've always loved since I was a little
Yeah.
kid. It's still what I dig now. So, I just and then Jacob actually turned that story into, like, this big feature he won the National Magazine Award for, which was
Wow.
essentially, like, this expanded obit about his father-in-law, but it's still, to me, always about the pepper and the eggs,
Ugh.
you know?
It it's just a fantastic detail. It really is. I remember when you kinda coached me a few years ago on writing my father-in-law's obit. And I'm so proud that I included that he put a stack of napkins this high next to his plate.
Yes, I
And I'm
remember
like,
that.
"'Cause I think you would like that too," and I think that, so much of the work that I feel like I do as a journalist, you are considering dead people,
Yeah.
I've even had conversations with other reporters where I'm like, "Oh my god, I'm so devastated by what I'm seeing," and you wanna honor people, and everybody has a different relationship with the dead, but I think to straddle those lines where you're talking about somebody in real tangible ways and like a person that you didn't know his father-in-law, but you
No.
remember that he liked pepper on his eggs.
Yeah,
A lot
never
of it.
forgot it for
So
some
good.
reason because I think it's about how people live.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the whole thing about obits is, like, they're not about death at all.
Yeah. 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 It's I mean, I think so much like this is I could talk about losses in journalism all day, and I do, and don't intend to stop. But like, beautiful journalism to me is just like it's a written snapshot. It's a picture, and like that's what I always feel from a good obit is like maybe more than any other kind of writing, and it does feel like maybe we'll never get back the whatever 20,000 word features that paid people like $6 a word or whatever, but I do think we can get obits back. I
You
think we can
do?
continue to
Okay.
get good, beautiful obits back. Well, there's always gonna be dead people, so
And there's always gonna be, like, new journalists, and I think it's
yeah.
just such a great one for people who are learning the craft because you have to figure someone out and get it right,
Yeah. Yeah.
Then it's also just, like, there's so much crap happening, right? There's so much to be sad and depressed and
Right.
angry about, but if you just, like, drill in and, like, spend time learning about one single person, I think that's the answer, Leah.
I mean, it's certainly like sometimes where the world feels so bad to me is the expansiveness of the bad. It's just like
Yeah,
forever going, into the
yeah.
hills. But to me, like if I can put borders, if I can around something and I can kind of like you know, just mentally restrict myself a little bit or give myself a project. And if that project as a journalist is just really getting to know one person, yeah, I do think that there's a takeaway there for the public as well,
What if that's
but
a palate cleanser for you and all your hard things?
writing obits?
You know what? We have solved this. I think
What?
you and I will make the 2nd season of Obit.
I would love
What?
that.
I did
Let's
not say that
do
out
it.
loud. Edit
Let's
it
do
out.
it. Edit it. We don't know how to edit video, so this is
Leave it.
going in, and you know what? I'm just gonna, like, live recruit Ryan for this because that's
Okay,
what I do. I just, like, recruit him to stuff, and he's
let's
like,
do it.
"'Kay. All right.
Let's go
Tell
back
the
in on dead
people."
people.
Jule, Banville, thank you so much for joining today. People can go to the obitproject.com.
Org.
Right? .org. I knew it was going to be an org. People can go to the obitproject.org to read more about the show, but it is also wherever you get your podcasts, as they say, right?
All the places. Yeah, it is
All
all
right.
the places. Oh my
Thank you
goodness.
so
Thank
much
you
for
so
this.
much. You're just a love. I just adore you.
Well, I feel
And
the
the
same about
Western
you.
Edge. You guys are kicking ass.
Thanks, man. That's what we're trying to do.
Yeah,
Let's go to Hamilton soon.
Yes. Remember our fun Thai dinner?
Yeah.
I love a
Never
road trip
forget.
with you. Yes. Now we'll road trip and go do stories about dead people. It's all happening.
This is like my dream. Excellent.
Okay.
All right, man. Thanks. See you
Thank
later.
you.
Bye.
Toodaloo. Bye.